Yes, folks, it's Thursday, 2 p.m. Pacific. I'm Fred McMurray, back from vacation with the grandkids. This must be
Hey, happy Friday Eve.
Happy Friday Eve. I can't believe it's already Friday Eve.
Oh, well, I can't either because I have a full week's worth of work to do in just a day and a half.
And why is that, Kristin?
Well, Ray and I have been gallivanting around Nashville for we had our neighborly convention, our reunion as they call it in that arena, and it was absolutely fabulous.
Did you learn lots of good stuff?
You know what's funny is I think that people who are in a franchise system for a while, often, and not all, but some often, a majority, sometimes often, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Tend to think that, I go every year. What could I possibly learn? And so they don't go. And a lot of times, even when you go, and even though maybe you go over the same things, they're presented a little more effectively, a little differently. Maybe your business has changed, gone through some transition, certainly coming out of COVID, right? Everybody's business has changed a little bit. And even if it's the same information, you come back with this renewed sense of energy, kind of a sharper focus on things that maybe you kind of let go by the wayside. Maybe the corners get rounded off a little bit more, and then you come back laser focused, right? And so it was really interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've been around for 15 years and Molly Maid and been doing this, and it can become old hat and you can get sort of to where you're just coasting through. But you got excited. You were texting me throughout the week, like, okay, we need to talk about this. Okay, we need to have that person on the show. Okay, here's something they were talking about that I haven't thought of. I never even heard of this guy. Why don't I know this person? And so you were clearly getting energized by the experience, even after 15 years, right?
Yeah. And I think, so we've talked about this on the show multiple times, and a couple of things I'm going to point out, and we're going to really talk about it as a panel, because interestingly enough, in the last week or so, Karen has gone to her convention, I went to mine, and Jerry went to his. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a lot of renewed energy, a lot of great new ideas that we're going to talk about. But in my portion this week, being a part of the neighborly group now, there were 4,000 people there from all different brands. And so the number of people that I met was really quite amazing. And I will tell you the most rewarding thing that I had happen. Ray and I had people come up to us to say, hey, we just want to let you know that when we were researching franchises, we found you and checked you out on Pillars of Franchising. And it was so cool. It was such a great show. And we just want to thank you for throwing information out there. And it really helped us. Somebody was telling us how much they enjoyed learning about the FDD, talking about the validation process. And it was funny because Ray and I were talking about kind of a dark subject before this one couple came up to us. And I said, well, let's just get through this. When we get back, we'll go have lunch and talk about it. And when the couple walked away, Ray goes, oh my gosh, I feel tingly inside.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly why we're doing what we're doing, right? Is to help people who and help them not make the same mistakes that a lot of people make when they become a new franchisee. So I think it's very exciting. That feedback also is energizing for you, right?
Yeah. And I think people have to understand, I mean, we were fortunate enough to be in a larger brand. We had Damon John, who is the founder of FUBU, also on the Shark Tank. He was our keynote speaker who has an amazing story of somebody who just has great perseverance. Not all brands are going to be able to pull in somebody like that. But I think it's important if you're a franchisee out there and convention is coming, share your ideas or your thoughts or your wants or your needs with your franchisor, because if you have those, probably other owners do too, so that when you go to convention, it's not a colossal waste of time. You want to make sure that they're addressing issues. Sometimes it's P&L issues, sometimes it's KPI issues, sometimes it's recruiting issues, but make sure that those conventions, those agendas serve you, the franchisee, so that it helps you grow and come back again with a new energy and a new focus.
Absolutely. And we're going to dig a little deeper on the value of that kind of thing and the value of community within your brand later in the show. But first, we're going to introduce our guest. Before that, though, I want to remind you that if you have questions for any of the Pillars team or our guest, who is a newer brand that you may have a lot of questions about, you may not have heard of them yet, call 323-580-5755, and we will do our best to answer your questions. But up next, we have a great, exciting brand for you. All right, Vincent, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. Great to be part of your podcast.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you and learn all about your brand. But before we get to that, I want to give a little intro to our audience so they know what we're talking about. This is Vincent Ginatta. He's the VP of Franchise Development for Bread Zeppelin, which is the coolest name ever of a franchise, I think. And they got started when Tony Sharhan and Andrew Solkov found themselves working for high-end specialty food concepts in Dallas, and while connecting over beer, discussed ways to improve the humble sandwich, as many businesses do, get started talking over beer, right? They talked about how the local marketplace was lacking energy, and Bread Zeppelin was born. Just the name alone provides us energy. We get a good idea in our heads, right? So they went to work crafting their vision. They are in Texas. They've caught on like wildfire. Those stores are doing really, really well. And now they are moving into the franchise space. So Vincent has experience in strategic business development and operations, proven experience leading a company from startup through expansion, and ultimately the sale to a strategic buyer. So he's got the ins and outs of all the businesses covered. He is currently working for Bread Zeppelin in their franchise development system. And so Vincent, welcome to the show. We can't wait to hear more about Bread Zeppelin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, the name is really our signature product, which is a baguette made in the French tradition, real ingredients, and it's hollowed out and filled with your choice of a chopped salad. So resembles an airship. And so the name Bread Zeppelin was born. And it's, as you pointed out, really catchy and just a great brand. Lucky to be a part of it.
I thought it had to do with Led Zeppelin, for crying out loud.
I guess we're referencing the same company, the airship company.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's like all about rock and roll. This is kind of a cool concept.
Well, we're still very cool. And
they're rocking and rolling in their healthy sandwich space.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
but it's not really a sandwich, is it?
No, so, we call ourselves a chopped salad company. And, like most concepts, you can get it in a bowl or in this very unique format, which is the Zeppelin, the hollowed baguette.
Mm-hmm. What I think is really cool about this is that not only are you truly an emerging brand, right? But that it is, and you're in a very busy QSR space for quick serve restaurants. But one thing that we know is that that space happens to be fairly recession proof. You guys have been around since 2019. Tell us a little bit how your corporate stores made it through the pandemic.
Yeah, so the pandemic was really tough for us just because we do not have, a drive-through formats. So we rely on the guests to come in. At that time when the pandemic really hit, third-party delivery platforms were obviously a thing and a well-established trend, but, wasn't as big a part of a business as it turned out to be. So,
right.
We like to think that we used our time wisely during the pandemic to really optimize the business. And first and foremost, to cater to the customer and allow them to use Bread Zeppelin in the ways that they wanted to, which primarily at that point was pickup, delivery. So we integrated with all the main third-party delivery providers. We launched a new branded app that also offered delivery through our branded experience, and loyalty functionality, so that our core users could have that. I've been just optimizing every facet of the business ever since. So I think we really embodied the saying, challenges are an opportunity.
Is this because of this, are you considering, I know obviously it's not a super huge point of entry at this point in terms of cost, but are you considering, or will you consider incorporating drive-throughs at some of your future locations?
That is one of my pet projects. So just to frame our strategy, we're looking to develop the DFW Metroplex ourselves with corporate stores and find franchise partners in strategic markets outside of DFW, for now in Texas and surrounding states. But one of our next units that we will build will definitely be a drive-through, and test that model out, see what it can do. I think there are good reasons why when fast casual concepts try it and get it to work, that ends up being all they want to build.
Right. Well, if Panera Bread can do it, I don't know why you can't do it, right? I mean, I never thought they would come out with that concept, but sure enough, they've got it, and it surprises me every time. So excellent. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you're looking for in a franchisee for your model?
Absolutely. So, we're, as you pointed out, we're an emerging brand, young company, so small team wearing many hats. At the same time, we really want to be a great franchisor to our franchise partners. And what we think that means is looking for franchise partners that do have restaurant experience, so that they're not relying on us, the franchisor, to really teach them how to run a restaurant. They already know that either through their current operations, if they're a franchisee of another brand, or past experience, if they recently, left a company or sold their own, small chain. And so we're looking for those candidates that either want to add us to their existing portfolio or have that experience and want to be kind of an early adopter of an emerging brand.
And what would you say, because you're an emerging brand and you preface kind of having a smaller team and things, what type of support would you have in place for your franchisees at this point?
So I think what we don't have in numbers of people, we make up with experience and passion. And so really complete. I think, certainly I have a very analytical background and was involved in the real estate development side of previous companies. And that's a key part. So,
right.
You can have the best brand, but in a tough location, it's going to be tough to make it work. So we're very involved in that process. Making sure that we find with our franchise partners the ideal locations, and then have, through opening our own corporate restaurants and going through that experience, very easy kind of project management tools to follow to build that restaurant. And then, also on the back of our operations, and, all my operations colleagues are also involved in the franchise side of the business. So they will provide the training, the opening assistance, and the ongoing operations support. A very exciting development for us, which for a small company like us is a big milestone, is we hired our first marketing agency this year. So really buttoning up our social media strategy, all the tools, the collateral, even the just grassroots marketing, which is the bread and butter of most brands, getting all of that buttoned up, the new store opening package. And so being able to provide that support as well.
Well, we're marketing you by using one of your stores as our background right now. I don't know if you can see it, but.
Oh, that's right. Awesome. Thank you.
Courtesy of Fred.
Yeah, that's our creative producer back there trying to get it in there.
Yeah, so I can tell that's our franchise partner's location.
Oh, okay. That's what that is. So tell me, this is not an easy role you have taken on in a very new brand in a very young stage. So what about this drew you in and was exciting to you? And what about it do you think will be exciting to someone, you know, in a very small and micro emerging brand? You're going to need some people who kind of already have the lay of the land, right? A little bit more experience in franchising in general and a little bit more knowledge. So what about your brand drew you in, and what do you think will draw others in, and what differentiates you from your competition?
Yes. So, you know, me personally, I was looking for a company that was led by great people. That's, you know, first and foremost. And I've had the fortune of knowing Troy and Andrew for many years. We actually went to high school together here in Dallas, Texas. And so for me, being part of a company that was led by people that I really trust and believe in was really important. And also, you know, it does come down also to the unit level performance. That's a huge component. That's obviously a component that our prospective franchise partners will look at. And that was really compelling, especially when viewed through the lens of so many things have not yet been optimized, and yet we're seeing these levels of performances.
Right.
So that was really, really enticing. And I thought that with my background, I could make the most impact on a company at this stage, and, you know, be that person that wears many hats and is able to structure these different departments, the real estate, the franchise development, and get our company growing.
A lot of people today are looking for franchises that are either semi-absentee or absentee ownership. Is your model something that lends itself to that?
We don't think so. One, because as we spoke earlier, the way our team is structured is not structured in a way to, you know, teach someone from zero how to run a great restaurant.
Sure.
But also we see that the successful examples of restaurant owners out there are people that are involved in, maybe if not in the day-to-day operations, if they have a strong operating partner, they're still involved in growing the brand in their community. You know, being part of events, you know, letting all their neighbors know, et cetera. And so I think that's a key part of what we're looking for, because it is just the more successful model.
Excellent. And obviously the one thing everybody wants to know is, can you tell us about what the franchise fee is, and what you require in liquid capital to get one of these started?
Yes. So it is $40,000 per restaurant. At this time, with a few exceptions for strategic small markets, we're looking for development agreements of 3 or more. And so it's the first whole fee plus 50% deposit of the subsequent units. The franchise royalty is 5%, and we're looking for liquid capital of $300,000 per restaurant. And, you know, we feel that gives really the franchise partner everything they need to always play on offense and get the restaurant started off the ground the right way.
Okay.
So what is your strategy for expansion? I know your corporate locations are all in Texas. I think your first franchise location you said is going to be Houston.
That's right.
And so what are you going to work from Texas out? Do you have strategic areas across the country that you want to target, or have you even got to that yet?
Yeah, so we've gotten to the first phase, which, you know, we want to prove to ourselves that we can be a great franchisor. And so let's prove that closer to home before we go out in California, you know, New York and other, which are outstanding markets. But we're really looking at Texas and surrounding states for that reason. Now, if we engage in a conversation with an outstanding operator or group where we really see eye to eye and values and all the relevant pieces, we will of course have that conversation about markets outside of these, but we're actively putting our resources into growing in Texas and surrounding states.
Awesome.
Yeah, a plan, but leave room for alternatives, right?
That's
you don't
right.
want to shut anybody amazing out. So
exactly.
Vincent, how should our audience reach you if they are interested in learning more about Bread Zeppelin?
Well, our website is a great place to get to, you know, the high level information. So breadzeppelin.com. From there, you can see the franchise specific page franchise.redzeppelin.com. We have an email address, which is franchise@redzeppelin.com. And all of those are great ways to reach us and get a conversation going.
Great. Well, we thank you so much for being on the show. We would love to have you back another time as things grow and as you begin expanding. So keep us posted on
Thank you. I'd love to.
What you all are up to.
All the best success to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you both. It was great being part of your show. I appreciate it.
And now,
hey, franchise owners, how's your local marketing? Do you feel like you could use some help keeping up with your social media posts and comments and reviews? Do you wonder if you could be doing more to attract local customers? Are you able to identify new move-ins to your local area? At Westvine, we help franchisees like you reach more local customers through digital marketing. With daily monitoring, creative content, and ad placement, and customer data intelligence, we'll get your business in front of the people who want your products or services. We also work with franchisors who need an agency to handle the digital marketing for all of their locations. If you're ready to reach more local customers, give us a call at 805-265-5440 or visit us at westvine.com. That's 805-265-5440 or westvine.com.
hey, Laura, welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. How are things going in your little corner of Chicago?
No, things are going well over here. Lots of folks interested in different franchises. I got a Phoenix salon one I just did, and another one. People are just coming in, so it's exciting.
That's great. What kind of great advice are you giving them?
Well, I think it's really important, that they think about all the different aspects. Franchising is comprehensive, right? They can't just ignore a certain part of it. So we try and make our planning meeting as very comprehensive as we can as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what kinds of things do you tell them to look for or to expect?
Well, I think that, they have to expect that it is their own business, right? Just like Vincent was saying, depending on the type of franchise that you're buying into, you have to know what their identity is, what their expectations are of their franchisees, right? Is it something where they want to do it, almost turnkey? Or is it something where, you're going to have to really be more of an owner operator? And neither one of those is bad or good. It just is what it is. And you have to make sure that your interests align with theirs, and that they, continue to roll things out, whether it's R&D, training, new marketing, new advertising. Even when I talk to my franchisor clients, right? Sometimes people are like, well, should they pay me, if I roll that out? And I'm like, well, I guess you could ask them to, but also, they pay royalties, so that way you will come up with new and cool things.
Yeah.
So, point counterpoint, right?
Well, everybody wants somebody else to pay, right?
That's the truth, right?
But the reality is there is an obligation, right? And it kind of works both ways, but there is an obligation for the franchisor to continue to help their franchisees grow and be successful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Franchising is, a partnership. It's not, legally a partnership in that definition, but one can't do it without the other, right? So
I know I was listening to a show this morning about some of the franchise fees. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that sometimes included in those franchise fees, if they break it out for you, includes your onboard training. It includes maybe your onboard training. It includes your opening supplies, right? There are some things that are included in there, and I think people need to be educated on what that actually includes.
Yeah, that is important. It used to be maybe 10 or even 20 years ago that when you looked at the franchise disclosure document, the FDD, that, there might just be one number, right? And it would be, $40,000, $50,000. And that was the whole thing, right? You didn't have any other initial fees. And something that's changed, I would say, over the last same period, that 10 or 20 years, is the rise of people who help people find franchises, right? And so now, and this is a good thing, really. It's a good thing to have someone
I like
who can
doing
help,
it.
right? But, you do get paid for your services. And again, this is all about everybody wants somebody else to pay, right?
Right.
And so now, because they didn't want to give up all, against, let's say that the fee is 30% of the initial franchise fee. Okay.
Right.
So now they break it out, right? So you might have a $40,000 initial franchise fee plus a different fee that's $5,000 for initial training, plus another different fee that's $2,000, for site selection assistance, and
Right.
this, and you will still end up at, the same 50, 60, whatever, but because it's all in little pieces, one, it's because of that impact of having the brokers involved, but also I think that it's somewhat easier for the franchisee candidate to understand, right? They can say, okay, training is worth $5,000. I mean, I would say training is worth more than $5,000, but that's the price that they've chosen to allocate. And so, there you do have to be careful, right? When you're looking at that, because unless you're being careful, you might not realize that those costs are not just that one initial fee.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you find that most franchisors have in their contract that there are requirements to attend, say, convention or ongoing training?
Yeah, absolutely. And those are really important. Pretty much every franchise disclosure document, every franchise system will require that the franchisee attend the, annual or whatever periodic conference and ongoing training, certainly. But there's also, there's a lot of other stuff that goes on, right? Other interim trainings. Like, I have a new franchisor that we just launched, and they will be, whenever they roll out their restaurant. And so if they roll out, a new, let's say a new special, right? And, the people have to do a short, but it is a required training to know about the prep, and, the servers have to know how to talk about it. And, if their managers miss, the training, they can get penalized. That's really important that everybody is speaking the same language. Everybody is up to speed on what the offerings are. So it's critical, for those, for the actual conferences or conventions, right? Like you were at, there is usually some kind of fee to attend, right? In some brands, it might be 200, in other brands, it might be 1,000. And then you also have your own travel, right? For staying at the hotel or the airfare, et cetera. But they usually do negotiate, some kind of reduced rates for that as well.
Sure. Yeah. And I think the one thing people have to understand is when you go, oh my gosh, and it's this much for that and this much for that. But a lot of work goes into putting those things together. And I'll tell you, there's a big difference. During COVID, there was one that I chose not to attend because things were still kind of hot. Not really anything I did not feel comfortable going. But I really felt like I missed a lot not being there. And now this year, it was very exciting. We learned about a new platform for hiring and retention. And we learned about all the new stuff that's up and coming. And I just think that if people don't, first of all, you're satisfying your franchise
agreement, right? Your compliance, right?
Yeah,
so that's always a good start.
Yeah, and I wonder, what recourse does the franchisor have? Because I know people who haven't gone in years.
So when sometimes in the newer franchise agreements, they will say that regardless if you attend, okay, one, it is still you're, in default if you don't attend, but even if you don't attend, then you still have to pay the 600 or 1,000 or whatever, because, they've done their own estimates, and they don't want everybody else to have to pay for the people who didn't come, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes kind of like, well, I'm going to get charged, $600 anyway, I may as well just go. And so, I don't know that the franchisors are really going out of their way to penalize people for not going to the conference. But at the same time, they do want people there. You will hear about it, right? If you don't go.
Right. Okay. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to go through this with us. And I think it's really important. Those are points of the FDD that people have to understand. It's not, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of different sections that you have to read, but your obligations and theirs to you when it comes to training and coaching and ongoing development, those should not be skipped past.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's a long-term relationship. It's not just a year or 2 years. It's frequently 5, 10, even 20 years.
Yeah.
So you really need that to continue.
Yep. Okay, very good. Well, thank you again so much, Laura. We really appreciate your feedback, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
As usual, thank you for joining Pillars of Franchising. We appreciate every single one of you. We want to give a shout out to our sponsors, the Titus Center for Franchising at Palm Beach Atlantic University. You can find them on the college's website. Also, Franchise Show 247, which can be found at franchiseshow247.com. We couldn't do without our sponsors, and we appreciate their support. Don't forget, we'd love to have calling guests. Our number to call in is 323-580-5755. That is 323-580-5755. If you have questions for our guest or for any of our $1 Million mentors, we welcome you to call in at any time on the show. We will do our very best to answer your calls. Stay tuned. More coming up.
Hi. Uh-oh, Jerry. I see
We're partly part of Jerry. Yeah.
Wrong way, Jerry.
Fred doesn't love me. He's there. Hey, there I am. Whoop. I get in the right place. I'm going the wrong way.
There you go. There you go. Excellent. Too funny. Hey, so let's talk about, everybody here has been to conventions in the last week or so. And Karen, I want to start with you because you have some of the most exciting news of everybody about your team. Tell us what happened with your team.
I do. Well, our team, we knocked it out of the park this past year. There are just certain years where you do well, other years where you struggle a little bit. Well, this past year, we totally knocked it out of the park. Our sales consultant was the #1 sales consultant in the world. Yeah. How cool is that? Our franchise was in the top 10 in the world. And remember, we're just Chicagoland. So it's not like we've got a lot of territory. So that was really, really fun. And we had several trainers who won a wow award for their training. So we really raked in some good stuff, and it was a great time to celebrate success.
That's awesome. That's leadership.
Thank you. Yeah. And a great team.
Awesome. Jerry, how about you? What happened over at Great Clips?
Well, I'll tell you what, those conventions are life-affirming and energizing and all kinds of other descriptive phrases I can use. We had, and you'll remember this, we had Venus Flygirl Armour on as one of our speakers, and she is a rock star that really spoke at the level of the general managers and the managers with her background and them being primarily women, many of them single moms and all that kind of stuff. And so they took tons of notes. They're ready to go back and own the world. They won some prizes. They got to dress up and do their thing. And I mean, it was a lot of money for us to spend as a franchisee to take them, but we will get that back many times over because of the results that we get with them coming back. Actually, just got my hair cut this morning. See, I'm looking real pretty.
Looking dapper.
Yes, and the lady that cut it was one of our general managers who went up there, and that's all she wanted to talk about. She was so excited. She had plans of passing that information along to her teams so that she could win more awards next year and be on stage more often. And I mean, that makes it fun, right?
Yeah, Jerry, you bring up a really good point, and Elizabeth and I were talking about it earlier today, about that energy, right? And I think that so many people overlook the power of going to one of those, and even if it's all old stuff, right? You do get this renewed energy. And I advised some of the people that were new this year at our convention, you've got books and books that you're just taking notes like crazy. And I said, just when you go back though, don't try to implement everything at one time.
Right.
It's like eating an elephant. Take 2 or 3 things, get those rolled out, 2 or 3 things, like, because your staff's going to freak out, right? Like, you try to change everything overnight, you won't be successful. B, you're going to freak them all out. So
exactly. That's not good. Like, don't take every idea back. You take a few back, right?
Right. And Karen, do you find that if you come back and you're like, woohoo, hair on fire, they're like, what is going on?
Exactly. And I always tell, because, a lot of times too, we had where someone who was newer would be like, oh, I like that idea. Okay, let's talk about that. I mean, you kind of have to talk through the ideas too, because some will work, some might not work as well, but you can maybe adjust the ones you think might not work. But it's great having that discussion and not trying to do everything, but do a few things.
Right.
Well, Karen makes a great point. And sometimes we don't identify the ideas that aren't going to work proactively. Sometimes, especially if you're in our case, a general manager's shoes, and she wants to change the world. She wants her team to get rewarded next year. So she comes back on fire and wants to do too much, and it'll alienate some people. Frankly, you could lose some staff by trying to do too much at once. And so we ask them to pick their top 2 or 3 ideas from the whole convention and go back and then rank those 3 and pick one to start implementing fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. And then have the second one start once the first one picks up momentum and they're kind of used to it. And that way it's a real slow thing. And actually the second and third one will feed off of the momentum of the first one, so it won't feel insurmountable and overwhelming. So, these ladies, they want everybody to make it next year. And one last point I'll make before I pass it back. So many of our franchisees only take people to convention who won awards or are going to receive awards there. And our mindset is we want to take everybody, because when they see some of their peers up there getting awards, they absolutely want to be up there next year. So sometimes they go back more fired up to start improving on things than the ones that won the awards this year.
Agreed. I think that's a really good point.
Agreed. It puts like a fire in your belly. Like, I want that. I really want that next year. So what can I do to get that?
Well, and what about, I think a lot of people also overlook the power of networking. So Jerry, from your perspective first, can you tell me what you think some of the big benefits are that owners who go there? Obviously, we talk about you may be in your business alone, but you're not in it completely alone. I've slaughtered that whole, you know what I mean?
He knows what you mean.
Our listeners may not, but I know what you mean. Yeah. You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. And
so the networking, it's huge, because especially in the era we live in right now, right? There's issues with staffing. There's issues with supply chain. There's issues finding good real estate. There's just, right now, there's extra work that has to be done. And let me tell you a story about us. We've got staffing issues across our 2 states, our 36 salons. And some days you feel like it's a little overwhelming. And then you go to something like that, and as you're talking to other successful franchisees, you realize they're all fighting exactly the same battles. And so, first off, you feel a little more comfortable in your own skin, knowing that you don't suck, right? It's not you, it's not your organization, it's the world. Secondly, you go start sharing ideas about what you're doing to change that metric and get more comfortable. And, we think we've got some great ideas that we're in the process of implementing. But then you come back, just like our managers did, you come back with a book full of new ideas that sound great from other people. And then you got to rank them and start implementing them and so on. But you literally you have a brain trust that is monstrous when you're part of a franchise system that you don't have in other ways. So I think the networking, right now we can call anybody today. I can text somebody right now while I'm still on this call and get an answer to a question that you can't get if you're not part of a franchise system.
I think another. Oh, sorry. I was just
going to say, sometimes I think it's better to get an answer from a fellow owner who's living it every single day than to call the corporate office and think you're going to get the right answer. Not that they don't want to give you the right answer, but they're not living and breathing it every day. I'm sorry, Karen, please go.
No, totally agree. Glad, I was also going to talk about too, where, Jerry, you were talking about just the whole networking piece and the ideas. And then I also think what conventions do is, and that's why I do love also bringing everyone, because they see they're part of something bigger.
Yeah.
They because, we're small businesses. And so the great thing about franchising is it's like, it's almost like you've got the local touch, you've got that small business feel, and you're part of this greater entity. And they feel it helps them become more connected with that too. And I think that's also a great part about conventions.
Yeah, absolutely. So Karen, was there anything? Oh, go ahead, hon.
I was going to say, I would add, this is related to what I said, but also tying into what Karen said. The same thing goes for our staff. Our staff is under more pressure now than they've ever been because of staffing issues. They're trying to do 30% more work than they ever have in their life. It leads to burnout and all kinds of other things. But then they go and they sit at that convention with their peers. And they hear, first off, that everybody's living that life. Yes, we're burnt out, but hang in there. It's going to get better. We've seen this kind of stuff. We're here for you. And they start sharing the same kinds of ideas amongst themselves at their level for things they can do, to lower burnout rates, to help maybe even recruit extra people or something like that, even scheduling things. So there's a lot of value for every level when you go to one of those conventions.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know there were a couple of things that I wound up sharing with the group while I was there, because I was quite shocked, as a franchise grows from, or evolves, I'll call it. In our case, it went from a kind of a family size type feel of an environment to a big corporate, right? We have 30 brands under the same umbrella now. And some people are not necessarily as content as they were when it was a smaller brand. And we started talking briefly about the FAST Act, right? And there were only a few of us in the room, believe it or not, who understood the FAST Act and what impact it has out in California. Of course, the California owners knew. And so I had to encourage everybody. I said, listen, there's a lot going on out there that affects small business. And we encourage them, go out there and get involved with IFA. There were so many franchise owners that didn't know about IFA, and they didn't know about how the elections that are up and coming can impact small business. And so I said, listen, I don't care what color you are. You can be purple, green, yellow, red, blue, doesn't matter, but just know what you're involved in, because a lot of this stuff affects small business. And it's just, I think, part of being a small business owner, even if you're not in it by yourself, sometimes we kind of get tunnel vision and we forget how some of the outside stuff affects our little businesses.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And we'll become so small like that, and, because we're working so much in our business, we do have to take a step back and say, okay, how are we connected, and to know what's going on. So before then you just kind of hit with something before you even know it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And that's why it's up to all of us to continue, as you did at your convention, Kristin, to continue to spread the word and ask questions. How much do you know about the FAST Act? Do you know anything about it? Do you understand that it's going to gravitate beyond fast food and into every franchise business? As you know, I'll share with the audience, I served on a national roundtable today as a speaker for the National Labor Relations Board is putting together a new rule about joint employer, which literally would mean that potentially, as a franchisee, I might have to turn over direction of my staff to the corporate group. I would no longer control them. And that entails everything to do with that person: scheduling, hiring, firing, holding accountable, the whole ball of wax.
Yeah.
And so if you don't get involved, and conventions are a great way to learn about this, whether it's for just your brand or IFA or some combination. But you got to stay on top of this stuff, because there are lots of things going on, in particular in DC and the state capitals, that will dramatically impact your business. And like right now, there is about a 2-week time frame when you can send in comments. You can read what's going on this new ruling, and you can send in comments on it. And of course, the majority of the comments that are coming in are going to help drive what direction that rule goes. So,
right.
It was interesting when I was on the call, because it wasn't just franchisees or franchisors. It was contractors and gig, people that do gig work and people that use subcontractors. I mean, a huge range. And again,
right.
That's what conventions do for you.
Yeah. And the thing is, in something like that, if it's so easy forget about it and not think about it, but it has such huge, huge impacts.
Yeah, and circling back to just kind of round out from my perspective, your brand's conventions are a chance to get some education on new things they're coming out with, or things they're thinking about doing, or what's the next remodel of your salon, clinic, restaurant going to look like, so that you get a chance to pitch in on that. You get to meet the corporate people and spend time with them. So whether you have a question or an issue or something like that, you have kind of a friend on the other end of that call, not just somebody you're calling out that
Right.
is going to hold you accountable maybe. So between the networking and the education, having some great speakers and being introduced to new ideas, it is just the money you spend is pennies compared to the value you're going to get back.
Absolutely. We always talk about making sure, one of the things that we do here with some of our mentorship, right, is making sure that we help people give back to themselves, because not always do you remember to invest in yourselves. And I think that one thing we forget about is really going to these conventions is giving back to ourselves, right? It's making sure that we sharpen the saw, as they say, right, Karen? And
Absolutely.
stay plugged in. So I hope you are both as excited and energized after your conventions as I am after ours. And I thank you both for sharing your thoughts. And I know that in the weeks coming up, we'll have a lot more topics to cover that we've all encountered at our conventions, because I know I took, like 6 pages of notes of things to discuss and people to have on the show and all these different things. So I know I'm not the only one who did that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's a good example. Just one last thing. It's a great example for our teams. When you were talking about that, Kristin, even about learning and investing in ourselves. And, we set the tone for the culture. We set the tone for our groups. Leading by example.
Yep. And anybody out there who's thinking about getting into franchising, I mean, this is a direct comment to you all. Don't think that you're going to buy a business and then you have no obligation to continue the journey of, training and developing not only yourself, but also those who work for you. So I certainly hope that this segment's been helpful to all of you out there. Thank you both.
I am Elizabeth Dunham, the Chief Content Officer for Pillars of Franchising. And I'm telling you that because I am always looking for people with a great story in the franchising space. If you have a great story that you would like to share either in the magazine or on the show, you can fill out our contact form on pillarsoffranchising.com. Also, while you're there, be sure to subscribe to the magazine. You can choose all of the services that you might be interested in if you're looking to buy a franchise, sell a franchise, become a franchise, if you need mentorship, and if you need to get the word out about your business, we have a lot of variety of sponsorships for you. So be sure to visit our website, like, subscribe, and share this show. And we appreciate every comment and every engagement that you offer. So be sure to visit our website at pillarsoffranchising.com.
And we'd like to thank you all for joining us on the show today with our guest, Vincent Ginatta of Bread Zeppelin. Please be sure to like, share, and comment on this episode, as well as any other that you happen to like. Thank you to Jerry Akers, our Million Dollar Mentor. Thank you to Karen Kimsey-Swart, our leadership guru, Laura Liss, our franchise attorney, Fred McMurray, and Elizabeth Dunham, our producers. I am Kristin Selmeczy, your franchise consultant, and together we are your resource for franchising success. This has been another episode of Pillars of Franchising, and the dream starts here.